We've got some massive swings today in the OTA for Marvel Snap. I think they honestly gutted Mr. Fantastic first steps and they completely reworked Ghost into a potentially powerful new tech card. Let's go ahead and dive into it, shall we? Mr. Fantastic is being pushed up to a 3 energy play, but also getting 2 points of power. He has a lot of parallels to Fastos with this change stat line, and I do fear that his playability is going to be similar. You're only going to get 3 triggers out of him over the course of the game now, as opposed to a potential 4. And taking up your 3 energy play is more valuable than your 2 because the power level of those cards is a lot higher, meaning he's contesting other things for playability in that slot. I'm going to be curious to see how it plays out, but I don't see this card being better than Serge, a card he was already competing for deck slots with in a number of places. Serge is getting a far more nominal adjustment downwards, with her losing a singular point of power. This change doesn't surprise me, but I also think it doesn't really impact the power level of the card a ton. While obviously this difference is going to lose you some games, I think every single deck that was already playing Serge still absolutely wants to be playing her, and I think some of the deck lists we previously saw that were playing Mr. Fantastic instead of Serge will probably be favoring her now because this 2 energy rate is so much more efficient than the 3 that Mr. Fantastic has been nerfed down to. Second dinner notes that the goal of these 2 changes is twofold. The first is that the end of turn deck has been quite strong, and changing Mr. Fantastic to a 3 is going to be a direct attack on that. The second is that they've been watching the impact of cost reducers and how they play with the variety of tech cards in the game, and they're hoping that by making Mr. Fantastic and Surge a bit worse, it'll make those deck lists less efficient. I will say I'm kind of growing tired of them playing whack-a-mole around the edges. First it's Galacta and Zabu and Gwenpool, and now Surge and Mr. Fantastic, and I truly just wonder how many more Thanoses and all these other cards they're going to nerf rather than taking a few points of power off of things like Shang-Chi, Shadow King, Cosmo, and others that are always omnipresent in these decks that they're nerfing around. Speaking of tech cards and the end of turn deck, Ghost is getting a complete rework. She's losing a point of power while staying a 3-drop, and she'll now have the on reveal remove the abilities from all end of turn cards here. So this gives us an element of counterplay we haven't seen in the past. We're going to be able to directly interface with end of turn cards, especially those that can't be red guardianed in a particular path. I think this is a phenomenal change overall. The previous Ghost saw no play, so this is a potentially new usable card, and she's Series 3, so she's going to be available in all end game player collections right off the bat. I will say I'm a little bit skeptical if this change can rein in the more powerful end of turn decks. The best of those end of turn decks right now, in my opinion, are generally speaking decks that are playing out Athena and Havoc on the last turn of the game, and then activating 1 to 2 copies of Invisible Woman, meaning they are not sitting on the board for Ghost to be targeting. Now, the way she is templated, it will give us a little bit of jockeying for priority against those decks, meaning if your opponent has priority, they can play Havoc and Athena out, and then you can ghost their path and tag their end of turn text off before they get to trigger. But that's definitely going to be a little bit of a coin flip guessing game like we've seen with other tech cards like Shang-Chi and Shadow King against other strategies. Past this new tech card and taking Mr. Fantastic down a peg, they're also making a more nominal adjustment to Havoc. He's gaining a base point of power and will now only gain +3 power every time his end of turn triggers. This means in the bigger combo deck looking to set up the double Invisible Woman, Havoc will only go to 13 power on the last turn of the game when he triggers 4 times, as opposed to the 16 power he's going to right now when he triggers 4 times. This is obviously a downgrade anytime you're getting 2 or more Havoc triggers. It also makes the card nominally worse with Bass, which is a synergy I've enjoyed in other shells, but there's no doubt about it, they're taking a knife to this end of turn deck in a few different ways. Another broad stroke set of changes they are making in this OTA is that we're exchanging Human Torch and Vulture on the move deck curve. Specifically, Human Torch is going to become a 3/3 that still doubles when it moves, and Vulture is becoming a 1/2 that when it moves, it gets +3 power. Second Dinner articulates in their description of this OTA that they felt like having Human Torch as a one drop that scaled kind of hamstrung their ability to make efficient move enablers, because everything they balanced had to be balanced around this hyper efficient card, doubling up a ton over the course of the game. I think one swing I'm surprised they didn't take here is way back in the day, they had initially nerfed Taskmaster to 6 energy, worried about 5 energy Taskmaster and big Human Torch being played on the last turn of the game. So hopefully that's a change that will get undone with Human Torch moving down to a 3. Overall, I think there could potentially be an argument that this perhaps makes Human Torch a little bit better because it's now no longer exposed to the card It's no longer exposed to the card Killmonger. You'll have to have a Shang-Chi or a Shadow King to interact with it, but it's also a lot less efficient if you're looking to bounce and pick it up, like we've seen in the popular bounce move decks time and time again. In addition to these move swaps, we also have Doctor Strange gaining a 4th point of power in the move package as a strict upgrade, as well as Topaz, a card that's historically seen little play as a Series 4 move enabler, gaining a 5th point of power, always moving the card played at her location to the center. I think both of these points seem relatively free, and if these are the type of stats they feel like they can add into the move archetype as a whole while making Human Torch a little bit less efficient, I think that's a welcome swap overall. Second Dinner does go on to note that this is a pretty broad stroke change to the move package, and they're not certain exactly where things are going to fall in terms of power level. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we see them do another pass of some of these cards, either up or down in the future, once we see how things play out for them. We also have a couple of our fairly typical +1 points of powers to other things in this OTA. We have Tiger Spirit from White Tiger going up to a massive 9 points of power, which I think is a welcome addition. 5 energy cards in Marvel Snap often struggle to be playable, so getting 10 points off a White Tiger with synergy, you have things like Odin to re-trigger it, or things like Circe to upgrade her body after the fact, seems like a nice free point to give. This will potentially change some dynamic in the early game deck building for early series players as well. We also have Trax gaining a point of power, going up to a 3/4. Second Dinner notes that one lesson they've learned in the past is that whenever you have a card like Trax that's proactively shuffling disruption into the opponent's deck and can potentially brick them completely, they tend to try and aim low because these cards can feel quite toxic to play against if they're too good. I'm actually a little surprised by this because I felt like the Darkhawk decks I was playing with him were quite reasonable, but I'm happy to get an extra free point there because I think Darkhawk is one of the more honest things in the game. It makes pretty reasonable numbers, and it's typically winning with this proactive disruption as opposed to breaking things directly after the fact with stuff like Shang-Chi. Overall, I would say I'm happy with the level of churn in this OTA. I think giving us a brand new utility card in the form of Ghost that players can reach for as Series 3 is a welcome addition to the game. I'm a little surprised that they gutted Mr. Fantastic as hard as they did. Maybe I'll be wrong and he's still playable, but I'm skeptical with this stat line reading this review if I'm ever going to want to play this card in his new state. I also think the kind of broad sweeps package rearrangement like they did with the movement deck and the justification for how Human Torch was restricting future designs is very relevant and worthwhile, and I think it shows one of the best things about the Marvel Snap team. They're willing to take these shots, unlike a lot of other teams, and see how things work out for the better and take another iteration if they don't. I will say, like I mentioned in the actual video itself, my one kind of pain point with these changes overall is that the Second Dinner team seems absolutely dedicated to never adjusting any of the tech cards in the game. First it's Thanos, and then it's Zabu, and then it's Gwenpool, and then it's Galacta, and now it's Mr. Fantastic and Serge, just like constantly all of the cards surrounding that 4, 5, 6 card tech card package of breaking everything your opponent does. They all get adjusted except for the actual tech cards themselves, and I'd be curious to see how often we're going to be playing whack-a-mole throughout Snap's history now before they actually trim a few points off of some of those cards that are constantly being played. As always, I would love to hear from you in the comments down below what you think of these changes and where I should start brewing. If you enjoyed my roundup today, make sure you smash the like button. If you want to not miss any Marvel Snap game news updates like this in the future, make sure you're subscribed to the channel.